My name is David. I was 32 working in real estate in Chicago, and I thought I had everything figured out. I'd been with her for nearly 7 years. Long enough to feel like my life was intertwined with hers in a way that could never be untangled. At least, that's what I told myself every morning I poured coffee into a chipped mug in our tiny kitchen. She was 30, stunningly beautiful, and brilliant in ways that made me feel both proud and insecure, depending on the day. She had that effortless charm that made everyone, including me, assume she was untouchable. Our relationship had always felt imbalanced, though I never realized how deep it ran. I was the fixer, the shoulder, the planner, the provider. She was the muse, the inspiration, the socialite, the one who could float through a room and leave everyone hanging on her every word. In public, we were a perfect pair. I thought it was love. I thought it was what people fought for. The first signs of cracks were subtle. Little things, a flippant comment dismissed as a joke, an unexplained absence, an eye roll I convinced myself I misinterpreted. I rationalized. I made excuses. I chalked it all up to stress, work, or my own paranoia. I told myself, she loves me. She would never hurt me. I believed it so fully that I ignored the whispers, the cold silences, the way she no longer shared her day with me unless it involved accolades or attention. Then came the undeniable betrayals. I found them the way anyone does when something inside tells you to stop pretending. Texts, photos, little admissions hidden in plain sight. She wasn't just distracted. She was living a parallel life, one where I didn't exist. And the worst part? She didn't even try to hide it from me in ways that mattered. There was a disdain, a flicker of amusement in her eyes that I saw when I confronted her. Like she was aware of the power she had over me, and she enjoyed it. The confrontation was silent, almost clinical. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at her, calm and measured, and asked for the truth. The truth came in half smiles and evasions. I realized in that moment that I had been handing her the keys to my dignity all these years, and she had used them to lock me out of my own life. I left the room without a word, and for the first time in years I didn't follow her, didn't plead. I just walked. The days that followed were heavy. She tried to call. I didn't answer. She sent messages, polite at first, then increasingly desperate. I stayed silent. Each attempt she made to reclaim the control she had lost only reminded me that my silence was the only weapon she couldn't manipulate. I stopped waiting for apologies. I stopped needing explanations. I realized the only power she had left was the one I allowed her to have, and I refused to give it back. Friends noticed the change immediately. The man who used to overextend himself for her attention was now untouchable in his calm. I didn't broadcast my betrayal. I didn't beg for sympathy. I simply existed on my terms, and the world responded differently when I did. Invitations she expected to manipulate me through disappeared. Social circles I once bent over backward to please became my allies because I no longer reacted to her whims. And the realization settled deep. The very people she had used to elevate her status were now silently acknowledging the shift. She was losing influence subtly but irrevocably, and she didn't even understand how it happened. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. A glance in the right place at the right time, a decision not to participate in her narrative, and the scales began to balance. I wasn't plotting revenge, not in the typical sense. I was reclaiming myself. Every achievement I continued to reach on my own, every event I attended without her, every time I chose my peace over her drama, chipped away at the illusion she had built, that she still had me under her control. And slowly, she realized she had no leverage left. She started to notice it first in the smallest ways. Invitations she expected me to bend to? Ignored. Social gatherings where I once waited for her cues? I arrived on my own, composed, confident. The whispers started, not loud, not pointed, but just enough for her to feel it. I was no longer the man she could manipulate with guilt or charm. I had become untouchable in ways she couldn't predict. The silence between us became a weapon she didn't understand. Friends who had been neutral now subtly aligned with me, not because I asked, but because I carried myself with a dignity that demanded respect. I didn't brag. I didn't seek validation. I simply existed in a space she had thought she controlled, and in that space she realized she had no access anymore. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects that demanded my focus, yet I did so with a calm precision that surprised my colleagues. Promotions came, recognition followed, but I didn't flaunt it. Every success was a quiet message. I thrived without her interference. The subtlety was key. This wasn't a spectacle. She wasn't going to watch me parade my life to hurt her. She would notice gradually as the world stopped revolving around her. There were moments, of course, when the old instincts flared. I'd catch her glances at social events, sharp, searching, almost panicked, and feel the faint thrill of knowing she couldn't reach me. But I refused to act on it. No confrontations, no dramatic revelations. Every attempt she made to insert herself into my life was met with calm indifference. Silence became my shield, dignity my armor. She tried subtly at first. A text here, a casual run-into me? There. I didn't respond. Then came the more desperate attempts. Invitations that were almost pleading, messages laced with guilt. Still nothing. Every one of her moves fell flat because the stage had shifted. The power imbalance was reversed quietly, irrevocably. The woman who once held all the cards discovered she had none. Friends started noticing her frustration too. Conversations that once centered on her began to shift. People no longer leaned toward her stories or her charm. I didn't orchestrate this, and I didn't need to. My only action had been to refuse the role she cast me in. The social gravity she relied on was eroding, and the world adjusted without drama or spectacle. The pinnacle moment, though subtle, was unforgettable. We ran into each other at a mutual friend's dinner. She expected tension, confrontation, or at least acknowledgement of her attempts to regain control. I smiled genuinely and asked about her life politely. She searched my face for anger, bitterness, or vulnerability and found none. The illusion shattered. She realized, maybe for the first time, that I had moved on, that her actions had no power over me anymore. The very thing she had relied on to maintain her dominance, my reaction, was gone. After that night, she stopped trying. Her messages ceased, the glances disappeared, and the subtle social manipulations faded. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I simply carried myself with the same quiet dignity, the same unwavering calm. Revenge had happened not through confrontation, not through spectacle, but through silence, through reclaiming my life. It was a strange relief to feel her absence as liberation. I no longer measured myself against her whims, her expectations, or her presence. My focus shifted entirely to my growth, my happiness, my peace. Achievements, friendships, personal milestones. Everything became mine in a way that felt unassailable. The power she thought she wielded had been hers only while I allowed it. Once I took it back, the shift was irreversible. There was one final lesson in all of this. Dignity is more powerful than fury. Silence, when wielded with patience and purpose, is louder than any accusation. The world notices calm strength far more than dramatic explosions. I didn't need to punish her publicly or humiliate her for my own satisfaction. The universe did that naturally as she realized she could no longer influence or control me. Time passed, and life settled into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. I woke up without dread, went to work without anxiety, and returned home without the weight of her expectations. The freedom was intoxicating, not because I had won, but because I had finally reclaimed my own life. She tried once more months later in the form of an unexpected message. It wasn't demanding. It wasn't pleading. Just a casual, "Hey, do you want to catch up?" I read it, set my phone down, and left it there. There would be no conversation, no closure she sought. The power she once had was gone. Permanently. I didn't reply. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. Socially, the effects were subtle but undeniable. Mutual friends who had once been pulled into her orbit now gravitated naturally toward me. Invitations that once required her approval no longer needed it. People treated me with respect, with genuine warmth, because I carried myself with an unshakable calm and authenticity. Her absence was felt, not mourned, but acknowledged. She no longer held sway. In my personal life, I rebuilt carefully, thoughtfully. I took the time to rediscover passions I had shelved for her comfort, to invest in friendships that had been neglected, to care for myself in ways I hadn't allowed. Each small victory reinforced the truth I had learned. Nothing could diminish me unless I permitted it. She was a chapter, not the whole story. The most satisfying part of it all wasn't a dramatic confrontation or her embarrassment. It was the quiet, irreversible shift in our dynamics. She had once believed she could dictate my world, my reactions, even my happiness. Through patience, dignity, and silence, I proved that the only true power she ever had was the power I surrendered. And once I reclaimed it, she had nothing left. I often think back to the day I first discovered her betrayal, the ache that felt like it would never leave. At the time it seemed catastrophic. It felt like the end of everything I had built. But in truth it was the beginning of a version of myself I hadn't known existed. A self-respecting, strong, and unshakable man who no longer allowed another's choices to define his worth. Her name still crosses my mind occasionally, and a part of me acknowledges the wound she caused. But there is no bitterness, no obsession, no desire for revenge. Silence and self-respect were sufficient. The lesson is simple. Dignity is your most potent weapon. Control what you can, your reactions, your choices, your boundaries, and the rest loses its power over you. I live now without fear, without compromise, and without looking back. I don't need applause. I don't need validation. I don't need her recognition or regret. Peace, quiet strength, and a life fully my own, that is my victory. She is no longer a part of my story, except as a reminder of the strength I discovered when I refused to beg, to plead, or to lower my standards. And that's the lasting lesson. Betrayal can break your heart, but it doesn't have to break your dignity. Respect yourself, set boundaries, and the world will eventually reflect your value, whether those who hurt you understand it or not. Some revenge is quieter than fire. It is the unshakable calm of someone who refuses to be diminished ever again.